The next section in Chapter 12 is about multiplying and dividing rational expressions. So we're going to need to remember how to simplify them like we did yesterday, but then we're going to multiply them and divide them. So multiplying rational expressions is similar to multiplying rational numbers. If a, b, c, and d represent polynomials, then all we have to do is multiply what's on top and multiply what's on bottom. Think to multiplying fractions. If I told you to multiply these two guys together, you would just multiply what's on the top, multiply what's on the bottom, and then see if you can simplify. So in this case, a 2 goes into both of them. 2 times 4, and then 2 times 9. So that's your common factor, and you end up with 4/9 is your answer. So same thing with this. Multiply what's on top, gives us -12, and multiply what's on bottom. So we got to use our exponent rules here. We end up with 5a's. And then before you box it up, check and see if you can simplify. And in this case, we can't, so we're done. That's it. Next problem's a little tougher, but not too bad. We multiply what's on top together. So we have x minus 5 times x minus 7. And multiply what's on bottom, x plus 3 times x. And then we're just going to leave it like this. I know it doesn't look nice and pretty, and we could double distribute this out and end up with something, but we're going to end up doing more stuff with this where we want them in their factors. So once you've checked that nothing can cross off and nothing can be factored down, you're done. That's it. Leave it messy like that. So let's try one that actually has some simplifying. So we need to multiply x minus 2 over 8x times -8x minus 16 over x squared minus 4. There's a couple different ways you can do this problem, but what I like to do first is simplify both of my numbers, or both of my rational expressions, before I multiply them together. So look at each individual part. X minus 2 can't be simplified, so I'm just going to leave that. 8x can't be simplified, so I'm going to leave that. And then this can't be simplified at all. There's no factors that they both have in common. I can't cross anything off, so I'm good. And I eventually want to multiply that to this stuff here. So when I look at what's on top, this can be simplified. Both of these have a -8 in common, and then I'm left with x plus 4. And then if I look at the bottom, I quickly notice that that's a difference of squares. So I know that's x plus 2 times x minus 2. So now when I end up multiplying all of this together, we still multiply everything that's on the top together. I'm going to make this look pretty and put the -8 first. And then I have an x minus 2 and an x plus 4 all on the top. And then in the denominator, I have an 8, an x plus 2, and an x minus 2. And now we get to cross off anything that they have in common. So they both have an 8, we'll get rid of that, and they both have an x minus 2, we'll get rid of that. And that's it, that's all they have in common. So this simplifies to, it's like a -1 here, times x plus 4, over x times x plus 2. And leave it like this. Don't distribute the -1 or the x, because we will eventually do more stuff with this. So we're done. So let's try some of these other ones. Now these are a little weird because the first one's a fraction and the second one's not. But remember, we can turn anything into a fraction by putting a 1 underneath it. So that's what you're going to have to do for both of these problems. So the first one, I'm going to do 3 times c cubed minus c, all divided by c times 1, which is just c. And then I notice that this stuff in parentheses here has a GCF. So they both have at least one c, and then I have c squared minus 1, all divided by c. So then I notice that these c's can cross off. So I have c times c minus 1, or c squared minus 1, and we can leave it like this. Now technically, if we were going to do something else with this problem, we wouldn't want to leave this because this is a difference of squares. This is c plus 1 times c minus 1. But because all we're doing is just multiplying, we can leave what we have in the green box rather than simplifying it even further. So the next one I'm going to leave for you to do. You are going to have to factor this guy here and see if it can cross off with anything anywhere else. So this brings us to division. Now remember, if you are dividing fractions, you keep the first fraction the same. You change the sign to multiplication, and you flip the second one over. Keep it, change it, flip it. So that's what they have here. AB divided by CD is really the same thing as AB times D over C. Because what you're really asking yourself, if you do 3 halves divided by 1/2, you're asking yourself how many times can 1/2 fit into 3 halves? So what you're going to do is multiply it by the reciprocal, and you end up with 6 halves or 3. So same thing here. You keep the first guy the same. You change the sign of multiplication, and you flip the second guy over. And then it just turns into a multiplication problem. So I'm going to multiply what's on the top, a times a minus 2, multiply what's on the bottom, and see what they have in common. So both of them have an a, top and bottom, and then both top and bottom have an a minus 2. So the only thing that's left is b, and since it's on the bottom, I gotta leave that one placeholder there. So that simplifies to 1b. So now the next one. And remember, there's a bunch of different ways to do these problems. I like to simplify stuff first if I can. So when I look at this top one here, 5m plus 10, I notice that they have a 5 in common, so I'm going to factor that out. And this bottom part here, I notice they have a 2 in common, so I'm going to factor that out. And then, remember, you keep this the same, you change the sign to multiplication, and you flip this guy over. KFC. Keep it, change it, flip it. So this is going to go on top now. And these guys, again, have something in common. They both have a 2. I'm left with 7m minus 10. And this goes on the bottom now. And they both have a 7 in common, and I have an m plus 2. So then when we multiply these guys together, you multiply everything on top, so multiply your numbers together. Then we have m plus 2 times 7m minus 10. Then in the denominator we have 2 times 7, 14, m plus 2 times m minus 10. And then we see what can cross off. 10 over 14 simplifies to 5/7. And then both of these have an m plus 2. So then on the top here I have 7m minus 10, and on the bottom I have m minus 10. And I know it's very tempting to want to cross some of this off and leave the 7s, or even cross the 7s off. But remember, if it's in parentheses, it's grouped together. This whole group needs to appear on both top and bottom in order for me to get rid of them. And since it doesn't, we're done. And these are the same problems as before, so don't do those again. I only gave you one problem to go back and do, so do that one. And I want you to try 3t plus 12 over 5t, and divide that by t plus 4 over 10t. So you have this problem and this problem to do. Try those, and we will go over them tomorrow. Enjoy your night.